Assalamu alaikum. Hello everybody and welcome to my channel إنجليزي تجريبي لغات. This is Mr. Ahmed Adli and in our video today we're going to study chapter 10, My Dora Dies, from the novel David Copperfield. Let's go. بيبدأ التشابتر باللتر اللي بعته ميسامي كوبر الاسيستنت بتاع يوريا هيب لديفيد وتومي تريدلز. David بيقول 2 days later, Mr. Truddles and I received very strange letters from Mr. مي كوبر. احنا عارفين ان Mr. مي كوبر بقى الاسيستنت بتاع يوريا هيب وبعد شغله مع يوريا هيب بعتوا letters لديفيد. وهنا ممكن نسأل why did Mr. مي كوبر send 2 letters to David and Tommy Truddles؟ نقرأ الجواب ونعرف السبب. I hope this letter finds you both well. Dear sirs, both of you must come to Canterbury at once. لازم تيجوا Canterbury at once. I have discovered horrible truth about Uriah Heep, and I want to share them with you as soon as possible. يبقى هنا السبب إن مستر مي كوبر discovered horrible truth. اكتشف حقائق رهيبة جدا عن Uriah Heep, and he wanted to share them with David and Tommy Truddles وعايز يشارك ديفيد وتومي ترادلز في الأخبار دي. Best regards, Mr. مي كوبر. So we did not waste another minute. Dora was too ill to travel. انت عارف ان ديفيد was married to Dora في الوقت ده. كانت مريضة جدا عشان كده we had to leave her behind. ما خدوهاش معاهم. We had arrived to Canterbury. Mr. مي كوبر met us at the front door and took us to Uriah's office. طبعا يوريا هيب ما كانش متوقع زيارة ديفيد وتومي ترادلز. Uriah was surprised to see us, but he welcomed us as old friends. أصدقاء بقى وعارفين بعض. Later, Agnes joined us in the office. انضمت أجنس بنت مستر ويكفيلد. We all sat down and started to talk. طبعا كلهم friends عارفين بعض. يوريا هيب شاف مستر مي كوبر لسه مستني. فقال له don't wait مي كوبر. يلا يا مي كوبر امشي. لكن مستر مي كوبر did not move. He stared coldly at his employer. قعد مبحلق كده ليوريا هيب. قال له did you hear what I said مي كوبر؟ انت ما سمعتش انا قلت لك ايه؟ He said angrily. قال له yes, but I don't choose to leave. هتعمل ايه لو انا مش همشي؟ Listen to me Heap. I don't care if I lose my job. اسمع يا يوريا هيب، انا مش هتفرق معايا لو انا فقدت وظيفتي معاك. I don't wish to work any longer for the wickedest man in England. طبعا كان كلام صادم جدا ليوريا هيب. أنا مش عايز أشتغل لأسوأ شخص موجود في إنجلند. يوريا fell back shocked, looking slowly round at us with a dark evil expression on his face. قعد يبص لديفيد وأجنس وتومي ترادلز. قال له I see you have arranged this between you. أنا كده فهمت اللعبة. انتم مظبطين كل حاجة بينكم وبين بعض. But I know who to blame for this. مين اللي يلام على كل ده؟ It's you, Copperfield. You're jealous of my new possession, aren't you? أنت غيران من وضعك الجديد. But I know things about all of you which I can use against you. أنا عارف عليكم بلاوي كلكم. For example, I know about your father's business mistakes, Miss Agnes. ميس أجنس أنا عارف بلاوي يا باباكي كلها في الشغل. وأنت تعالى لي بقى يا ديفيد. I know about your past in the warehouse. يلي كنت بتغسل أزايز في الwarehouse. So be careful. I warn you all. طبعا ديفيد تجاهل كلام يوريا هيب وقال لمستر مي كوبر Please tell us what you were going to say about this man. قول لنا يا مستر مي كوبر هتقولي عن الراجل ده. Just then Tommy Truddles كان جاي مع ديفيد لكن who had disappeared a few minutes before reappeared with Mrs. Heap. راح شوية اختفى ورجع جاب Mrs. Heap معاهم اللي هي مامة يوريا هيب. Uriah had not noticed Truddles before. Who you are؟ كان أول مرة يوريا يقابل تومي ترادلز. أنت مين؟ قال له I am a lawyer and a friend of Mr. Wickfield, sir. أنا محامي وصديق Mr. Wickfield. And he's asked me to carry out all his business arrangements from now on. وهو طلب مني إن أنا أدير له البيزنس بتاعه من هنا ورايح. طبعا this came as a surprise to me as well as to Uriah. Uriah ما كانش مصدق إن مستر Wickfield ادى تومي ترادلز a responsibility to carry out all his business arrangements. طبعا كان رد يوريا هيب بيقول The old fool has been drinking too much again. طبعا هنا بيقصد مستر ويكفيلد. الراجل ده رجع يشرب تاني. You can't believe anything he says. ما تصدقوش اللي بيقوله. And you've bribed my assistant I suppose to speak against me. وانتم bribed معناها دفعتوا رشوة. My assistant اللي هو مستر مي كوبر to speak against me. طبعا تومي تريدلز ما استحملش الكلام قال له It's you who have been dishonest. لو حد فينا مش أمين هو أنت. As we shall hear from Mr. Me Cooper, and we all looked expectantly towards that large important looking gentleman. كلنا لفتنا انتباهنا لمستر مي كوبر. He was clearly delighted to have such an interested audience. طبعا كان مبسوط اللي كلنا بنسمع له and cleared his throat several times before starting to speak. As he spoke, his voice became louder and louder with excitement. صوت الحق بقى كان عالي بتاع مستر مي كوبر until he was almost shouting. قال لهم إيه؟ مستر مي كوبر قال Ladies and gentlemen, when very poor and desperate for work, I came to Canterbury as assistant to this evil man Heap. أنا كنت فقير جدا ومحبط جدا. أنا جيت أشتغل عند الراجل ده as an assistant اللي هو يوريا هيب. I am sorry to say I was soon involved in all his wicked plans. لقيت نفسي اتورطت في كل الخطط الwicked شريرة بتاعته. I may be poor, but I cannot accept his lies. أيوة أنا فقير لكن لن أقبل أكاذيبه, his cheating and his bribes and all the rest of it. So I have brought you here today, ladies and gentlemen, to hear me accuse Heap publicly. أنا بتهم يوريا هيب علنا. One, he has confused. طبعا وهنا ممكن يسألك What did Mr. McCooper accuse Uriah Heep of? أول حاجة he confused and lied to his partner. شريكه مين؟ اللي هو Mr. Wakefield. يبقى confused and lied to Mr. Wakefield. بعد كده Mr. Wakefield لدرجة هو thinks that he has himself been dishonest. صدق فعلا إن هو غشاش وعدم أو مش أمين زي يوريا هيب. 2. He has sometimes copied Mr. Wakefield's signature on false documents and checks. كان بيزور copied Mr. Wakefield's signature aimed Mr. Wakefield on طبعا to false documents على الوثائق والchecks. 3. For 4 years he has been stealing for 4 years أو 4 years he has been stealing large amounts of money from Mr. Wakefield and the firm. ودول الثري accusations أو الثلاث اتهامات اللي اتهمهم Mr. مي كوبر to Uriah Heep. 1. He confused and lied to Mr. Wakefield. 2. He copied Mr. Wakefield's signature onto false documents and checks. كان بيزور إمضة Mr. Wakefield. Number 3. He had been stealing large amounts of money. كان بيسرق فلوس من شركة Mr. Wakefield. طبعا يوريا هيب قال You can never prove it. اثبته. طبعا مستر مي كوبر كان ناصح شوية. قال له ما تقلقش يا سوسو. I have taken copies of all the necessary documents. أنا خدت نسخ من كل documents while working as your clerk. And just to make sure I have given them to Mr. Truddles to keep safely. واديت كل الدوكيومنتس والوثائق دي لتومي ترادلز to keep them safely. طبعا ميسيس هيب شافت ان ابنها خلاص اتهزم. قالت له يوريا my dear boy tell them how humble you are. قول لهم يا ابني انك غلبان. say you didn't mean to hurt anyone. قول لهم انت ما تقصدش. say you're sorry and arrange matters with the gentleman. do dear boy اسمع الكلام يا ابني. طبعا يوريا اتضايق جدا. mother be quiet. Don't help my enemies. مين اللي قال الكلام ده؟ Uriah Heep told his mother. Don't help my enemies. Copperfield here would have given you £100 to say what you've just said. ده ممكن ديفيد على استعداد يدفع لك 100 جنيه وتقول الكلمتين دول. Suddenly فجأة Aunt Betsy اللي جت معاهم في المشهد عمة ديفيد attacked Uriah hitting his head with his umbrella. راحت مسكت في راسه ونازله فيه ضرب بالامبريلا. Give me back my investments, she cried. اديني فلوسي يا حرامي. I thought Mr. Wakefield had lost my money. أنا كنت فاكرة إن Mr. Wakefield هو اللي ضيع فلوسي. And I did not want to hurt Agnes by saying so. فاكرين لما كذبت على ديفيد وقالت له إن أنا I used to invest my money with Mr. Wakefield بعد كده I took it back وأنا اللي ضيعتهم. هي كانت بتكذب عشان ما تجرحش أجنس. But now I know you have you have had control of the firm. أنت اللي مسيطر على الشركة and you have stolen money. Somehow I managed to get her away from him. ديفيد قال لك سلكته من تحت ايديها before she hurt him too badly. Then Mrs. Heap fell on her knees to all of us. ترجت ديفيد وتومي ترادلز begging us to forgive her boy and to remember how humble he always was. وقد ايه ان هو كان غلبان ومتواضع. طبعا يوريا مش عاجبه الكلام مامته. Be silent mother. And he turned to Traddles and asked it unpleasantly. وقال له well, what are you asking me to do? طلباتكوا ايه؟ قال له not asking, demanding. احنا مش بنطلب منك، احنا بنأمرك هيب. وهنا كانت الطلبات او الاوامر اللي كان عايزها تومي ترادلز من يوريا هيب. 1. You will give us keys to all your boxes and drawers. هتدينا مفاتيح كل البوكسز والدروورز، الادراج والخزن كلها. All your documents and checkbooks ودفتر الشيكات. Everything in fact that belongs to the firm. كل حاجة تخص الشركة. You will stay in the house until we have checked all documents. انت مش هتتحرك من هنا لغاية لما نراجع كل حاجة. طبعا يوريا قال لهم and if I don't agree. ولو ما وافقتش. قال له خلاص. تومي ترادلز بيرد عليه Copperfield. Perhaps you would fetch a couple of policemen. روح يا عم هات لنا الشرطة وخلاص. Things move slowly in the law courts. الحاجات بتاخد وقت في المحكمة. But in the end, Mr. Wakefield will get his business back and you Heap will be in prison for a very long time وده هيبقى مصيرك في السجن. يوريا خلاص realized that he had to do what we wanted and went to fetch the documents. راح يجيب كل ال documents with Mr. Deck اللي هو كان الاسيستنت بتاع Aunt Betsy at the door with his blackest most evil expression. He turned and said to me وراح قايل لديفيد I have always hated you Copperfield. I have always hated you Copperfield. Then he was taken away. قال لي ديفيد أنا طول عمري كنت بكرهك على الرغم في chapter 9 قال لي ديفيد I like it you but you don't like me. In the next few days, Traddles and Mr. Cooper worked very hard together to put right what Uriah had done. قعدوا مع بعض يصححوا البلاوي اللي عملها يوريا هيب في الشركة. They discovered my aunt's money and gave it back to her and paid all the firm debts. طبعا اكتشفوا لقوا فلوس Aunt Betsy اللي كان سرقها يوريا هيب and paid all the firm's debts ودفعوا كل ديون الشركة. Mr. Wakefield decided to sell his business and retire. قرر إن هو يتقاعد. The Wakefields did not have much money. ما كانش معاهم فلوس كتير جدا but at least they did not owe anything. مش عليهم أي حاجة. In the end, Uriah Heep and his mother left Canterbury and we all thought that he was too evil to stay out of trouble for long. وكنا عارفين إن هو هيقع في أخطاء تاني ومش هيقعد يعني هيقع في أخطائه والخطط الشريرة بتاعته. يبقى النهاية إن يورايا هيب الشخصية الشريرة دي and his mother left Canterbury سابوا Canterbury خالص. طبعا هنا مستر كوبر must be rewarded لازم يكافئ. طب يكافئ ازاي؟ ما هو اللي اكتشف في بداية الشابتر قلنا Uriah's evil plans. My aunt had a wonderful idea for the Cooper family. قالت له ما تسمع يا مستر كوبر. Have you ever thought of going to live in Australia? ما تروح أستراليا. It's a new country with a lot of business opportunities. وهناك في فرص وظيفية كتيرة جدا. Mr. Cooper was very interested. قال لها فعلا والله something could easily turn up there. ممكن حاجة هناك تكون أفضل من هنا. My aunt وهنا نقطة المكافأة. My aunt generously offered to lend him the necessary money to pay for the journey. عرضت عليه إن هي تسلفه تكاليف ومصاريف الرحلة. And the whole Cooper family started planning and packing immediately وجهزوا نفسهم. When I returned to London الجزء الحزين جدا I realized my poor Dora was much worse. حالتها كانت سيئة جدا. ما كانتش بتنزل خالص. She stayed upstairs all time now. And the sitting room seemed very quiet without my little child wife in her usual place. طبعا السيتنج room كانت فاضية جدا من غيرها. One day when I was sitting with her in her room, she said lovingly, David, David dear, I am afraid I was too young. أنا بعتذر لك يا ديفيد، أنا كنت صغيرة جدا. قال لها don't say that Dora, don't say that. قالت له I was a silly little girl. كنت فعلا يعني بنت غلسة جدا معاك يا ديفيد. And you know what? It's just as well that I want to live much longer. أنا مش هعيش يا ديفيد. Perhaps أنت عارف يا ديفيد if I lived لو هعيش أكتر من كده you would wish you had married. أنت هتتمنى لو أنك تزوجت someone more sensible. حد أكثر عقلانية. More practical. أكثر عملية. Someone like ولسه هيقول like عارفين مين like مين يا أصدقائي؟ مين عندنا هنا sensible و practical؟ طبعا Agnes. She did not finish what she was saying. قال لها but we've been so happy Dora. ما تقوليش كده، أنا شفت معاك أيام جميلة كتير. Trying not to cry. She took my hand and kissed it. قالت له we have, haven't we David؟ فعلا يا ديفيد قضينا أيام جميلة. Do you think if I asked Agnes، وهنا آخر طلب طلبته دورا من ديفيد. أنا عايز أشوف Agnes. Do you think if I asked Agnes she would come and see me? I have something particular to say to her. أنا عايز أقول لها حاجة. يبقى هنا Agnes أو Dora asked David to see Agnes. Of course, my love, I will write to her tonight. Agnes came the next day. She went upstairs to see Dora. Although the doctor and my aunt had told me that there was no hope. خلاص يا ديفيد مفيش أمل that Dora would live. When I held her hand, I saw her love for me in her innocent blue eyes. حسيت إن هي بتحبني أكتر وأكتر. I could not believe she would be taken from me. But when Agnes came downstairs, آخر لقاء كان معاها وهي وأجنس. Agnes came downstairs so calmly and silently, and said nothing, but raised her hand and pointed upwards. رفعت إيديها وشاورت لفوق. I knew it was over, and I remembered only darkness for a long time afterwards. لم أتذكر إلا الظلام بعد ذلك. In the middle of my terrible sadness, I received a message from Emily. فاكرين إيميلي يا شباب اللي هربت مع steer forth. She asked me to write or to take a letter from her to Ham. Ham اللي هي سابته her last words to the man who had loved her so much. Before she and Daniel left England for Australia, برضو دانيال وإيميلي كانوا مسافرين على أستراليا. They were sailing in 2 weeks time and the Coopers were going on the same ship. على نفس المركب بالضبط. I remembered my childish love for the little Emily. تذكرت أيام إيميلي وأنا صغير and I agreed to do what she asked. طبعا احنا عارفين إن هام موجود في يارموث. يبقى why did David go to Yarmouth after Dora died؟ علشان to take a message or to take a letter from Emily to Ham. The weather was very stormy as I traveled through the night to Yarmouth. Several times the coach was almost knocked off the road by the wind and the rain. طبعا الدنيا كانت شتاء وكان هواء شديد جدا. By the time we arrived in Yarmouth, most of the local people were in the streets. لا الناس كلها أغلبها قاعدة في الشوارع. ليه؟ They were afraid to stay in their houses. طبعا انت شايف الجو. In case the roof or the chimney blew down. ممكن السقف أو ممكن المدخنة تروح واقعة على البيت. Many women were crying after, afraid for their husbands or brothers who were out fishing in their small boats. طبعا كان في صيادين بيصطادوا. The sea itself with its huge waves crashing noisily on the beach. صوت البحر كان شديد جدا. Frightened us all very much. I went to the hotel and tried to sleep a little after my tiring journey. حاولت أنام, but the wind made so much noise that I could not sleep, and I went down to the beach again, where a lot of people were standing together, watching the waves, But by now the storm had got even worse. طبعا في عندنا في الجزء اللي جاي فيه اتنين مهمين جدا للأسف هيموتوا. في حد من اللوكال fishermen بيقول لديفيد two ships have gone down sir. في مركبين غرقوا يا فندم. A few miles away. We could not save any of the men on them. The waves were too high. And look, there is another. السفينة التالتة كانت بتغرق يا شباب. And suddenly I gasped in horror. I could see a great ship, which had been pushed violently on the rocks by the waves. طبعا سفينة بتدفع بسبب الهواء وبسبب الأمواج. It was in danger of falling back into the waves. يا إما هتتقلب or of breaking in half أو هتتقسم نصين at any moment. Several figures were visible on the ship. كنا كلنا شايفين في ناس على الشب. Especially one very active curly-haired young man. أنا كنت شايف واحد كده شاب curly-haired شعره curly who seemed to be giving orders. عمال يقول لي ده أنت روح هنا وأنت تعالى هنا. The crowd on the beach cried out as the ship rolled and a huge wave swept it over. طبعا الwave أو الموجة قلبتها خالص. Carrying the men into the rushing water. In a moment, the only figure we could see was the curly-haired young man. ما شفناش غير الشاب الصغير ده اللي هو شعره curly holding desperately onto the side of the ship and calling for help. ساعدوني help. طبعا what could we do؟ محدش عنده الجرأة ان هو ينزل المية في وقت زي ده. It was certain death for any man to enter those waves. Just then I saw Ham Biggity. هام يا جماعة الشجاع هو الوحيد اللي بيحاول ينقذ this young man. Ham Biggity running through the crowd to the edge of the water. كان هام رابط نفسه بحبل. One end of a rope was tied around his waist. رابط حبل حوالين وسطه. And the other end was held firmly by three strong men standing on the beach. طبعا واصحابه ماسكين طرف الحبل التاني. No Ham! No Ham! ما تعملش كده يا هام. قال له don't try to rescue that poor sailor. You will kill yourself. مين اللي قال يا شباب؟ David said that أو told Ham. ما تحاولش تنقذ هتموت يا هام. قال له let me go Master Davy. Let me go. If God thinks it's time for me to die, then I am ready. لو ربنا رايد إن أنا أموت دلوقتي I am ready friends. I am going in. Give me more rope. طولوا لي الحبل شوية. He dived in under a great wave and swam strongly towards the ship. In another moment he would have reached it. كان قرب يوصل وينقذ this young man when a high green hell of water appeared. Hell of water جبل من المية ظهر and the ship went down with a great crash. The people on the beach pulled on Ham's rope. سحبوا هام لأن هو دخل جوه المية ودخل جوه الويف and he arrived at my feet dead. وأسفاه للأسف لما وصل عند تحت رجلي he was dead. They carried him to the nearest home and they called the doctor, but nothing could be done for him. He had been beaten to death by that great wave. للأسف الموجة كانت خلصت على هام وأول واحد مات هو هام. Ham died يا شباب while he was trying to rescue this young man. والمفاجأة لما تعرفوا مين هو الراجل أو اليونج مان الشاب اللي هام كان بيحاول ينقذه. ركز معايا. And his generous heart had stopped forever. توقف قلبه. As I sat hopelessly by his bed, a fisherman who had known me when Emily and I were children. أحد الصيادين كان عارف ديفيد came to tell me he recognized the curly-haired sailor. الشاب اللي هو كان متشبث بالside of the ship اللي هام كان بيحاول to save him, whose body had been thrown out of the water by the waves. I went to see, and there on the beach where she and I had played, نفس البيتش اللي كنت بلعب عليه أنا وإيميلي, I saw, عرفتوا مين يا شباب؟ ستيرفورث lying. أيوة ستيرفورث هو صديق ديفيد اللي هرب مع إيميلي اللي كسر قلب هام. Steerforth died with his handsome face on his arm. He would never smile at me or Emily again. لن يبتسم مرة أخرى. شفتوا يا جماعة شهامة هام؟ هام died وهو بيحاول to save ستيرفورث اللي هو المفروض he broke Ham's heart. I was surrounded by too many ghosts to return to London. كم حد ديفيد فقده دلوقتي؟ دورا، بعد كده هام، بعد كده جيمس ستيرفورث. And my whole life I was selfishly sad that I had lost my child wife, my childhood friend, and sometimes I felt I wanted to die. ديفيد حس إن هو نفسه يموت. So I left England. I traveled for many months in Europe. I lived in a dark, miserable dream. سافر في كل أنحاء أوروبا with no hope or interest in my future. فقدت الأمل ويأست من الحياة. لما كان ديفيد في سويسرلاند في سويسرا one evening I arrived in a village in Switzerland and received a packet of letters that had been waiting for me. طبعا جاله جوابات. أهم جواب كان من مين يا شباب؟ The first one I opened was from Agnes. She gave me no advice, but she told me simply that she trusted me to find a purpose in my life. أنا واثقة فيك يا ديفيد إنك هترجع تلاقي غرض وهدف من حياتك. And that she would always be proud of me. And she loved me as a sister. As the light died out of the sky, and I watched the color of the snow on the mountain tops change, I felt I was waking from my unhappy dream. الجواب ده صحاني من الحلم اللي أنا كنت عايش فيه. مش حلم ولا حاجة، كان كابوس. And I began to understand how much I loved Agnes. ياه، أنا ما كنتش أعرف قد إيه إن أنا كنت بحب أجنس. She had been the one who had always guided and supported me. كانت دايما بترشدني وتدعمني. And now I realized I needed her love for the rest of my life. أنا محتاج حبها ليا. Had falling in love with Dora been a mistake? Had falling in love with Dora been a mistake? جاي تسأل دلوقتي يا ديفيد كان خطأ إن أنا أحب دورا؟ We had both been very young. It's true. I had always called Agnes my sister, and now perhaps I no longer had the right to ask whether her love for me was more than sisterly. طول عمري أقول لها you are my sister, you are my sister. هل أنا دلوقتي من حقي أعتبر إن حبها ليا more than sisterly أكثر من مجرد حب إخوات؟ However, قرر ديفيد I decided to return and traveled home to England. After 3 years of absence, بعد غياب 3 سنوات, I was delighted to find that Tommy Traddles had married his Sophie. تزوج من البنت اللي هو كان خطيبها. And he was doing well as a lawyer. My aunt had moved back to her old Dover house. رجعت بيتها اللي كانت مأجراه, and she was living happily there with Mr. Dick and Peggotty. When I visited my aunt, I took the opportunity of asking her about Agnes. سألتها وقلتها, my aunt, has she any young man she would like to marry? هي أجنس مرتبطة؟ My aunt looked carefully at me as she replied. قالت له I suspect she has. أعتقد يا ديفيد أكيد هي مرتبطة. She's never mentioned it to me, but I think I feel sure she's going to marry soon. أعتقد هي بتقول له كده عشان تحمسه، ده هتتجوز لو ما لحقتش. طبعا I was firm with myself and I did not show my feelings. ما وضحتلهاش مشاعري. I boarded a horse and rode to Canterbury to ask Agnes myself. قلت والله لا أروح أسألها بنفسي في Canterbury. When I saw that beautiful, gentle face again, I knew I had come home. حسيت إن أنا رجعت بيتي مرة تانية. I knew how dear she was to me and would always be. Agnes, I said, I am so grateful to you. أنا ممتن جدا ليكي for making me what I am, for helping me to be good. But I think you have a secret. Let me share it. Agnes, as your brother, tell me whom you love. كأخوكي قوليلي أنت بتحبي مين. طبعا Agnes turned away from me and burst into tears. أول ما قال لها أنت بتحبي مين طبعا بكت وعيطت. Somehow these tears did not sadden me. دموعها دي ما خلتنيش زعلان ولا حاجة but gave me hope. My dear Agnes, don't cry. قالت له ديفيد leave me David I can talk about it now ما عنديش قدرة أتكلم دلوقتي عن الكلام ده. قال لها أجنس you are dearer to me than anything in the world أنت أعز حد عندي. Don't you think I will be jealous of any man you choose to marry. أنا مش هحس بالغيرة ولا حاجة. I only want you to be happy. She had stopped crying now and was calmer. If I have a secret, David. لو أنا عندي سر يا ديفيد, it is not a new one. دي مش حاجة جديدة. It has been my secret for a long time. افهم بقى. I was wild with hope. معقول اللي بالي. Not a new one. مش حد جديد did you mean? Dearest Agnes, I hope to call you more than a sister. كلامها ده شجعه وقال لها أنا عايز أقول لك إنك مش مجرد أختي. She was in my arms sobbing again, but this time with happiness. كانت مبسوطة إن هو ابتدى يفهم ويحس إن هي بتحبه. I went away, Agnes, loving you. I returned home loving you. طبعا اعترف لها بحبه. We held each other for some time, sure now of each other's love. اتأكدنا ان احنا بنحب بعض. There is something I must tell you, David. انا عايز اقول لك على حاجة يا ديفيد. هتقول له على الكلام اللي قالته دورا before she died. مش انتوا فاكرين يا اصدقائي ان كان في meeting بين دورا وبين اجنس, واجنس before she died, دورا before she died asked David ان هو يجيب لها اجنس. I have loved you all my life, she said it. أنا طول عمري بحبك يا ديفيد. And something else. Before our sweet Dora died, she asked me, can you guess? عارف طلبت مني إيه? To fill the empty place in your heart. أن أملى الفراغ في قلبك. كانت دورا عارفة إن ديفيد هيحس بفراغ بعدها. And Agnes laid her head on my shoulder and cried. And I cried with her. Although we were both so happy. بس ده دموع الفرح. على فكرة الستوري هتنتهي بشكل جميل جدا. My story has almost come to an end. I have published several books now. عندك أول حاجة ديفيد قدر إن هو ينشر أكتر من كتاب لأن هو كان كاتب. And I am a well-known writer. Agnes and I have been married for 20 years and live in perfect happiness with our children around us. طبعا تزوجوا وكان معاهم أولادهم. سمعنا كمان إن دانيال بيجتي in Australia. He and Emily have made friends there and are very happy وعايشين حياة جميلة. Mr. M. Cooper كمان has become an important figure in a large Australian town. بقى شخصية كبيرة جدا في أحد مدن أستراليا. And his family are quite used to living there. متعودين على الحياة وتأقلموا. My aunt and Mr. Dick and Biggity are all white-haired and old now. بقوا عواجيز في السن but still very fit. They love playing with our children whenever they can. My old friend Treadles has two sons of his own. طبعا تومي تريدلز تزوج صوفي وبقى عنده two sons and will soon become a judge وهيبقى قاضي. When I think of my friends and family, Agnes's lovely face shines above them all. She's here next to me as I write, and I hope that when my life comes to its end, she will be with me in the shadows pointing upwards to the light. أتمنى لما حياتي توصل لنهايتها تكون موجودة جنبي. And this is the end of chapter 10, My Dora Dies. وبكده نكون وصلنا لنهاية chapter 10 My Dora Dies من رواية ديفيد كوبرفيلد. ايه الحاجات الأساسية اللي حصلت في الشابتر بتاعنا؟ في بداية الشابتر ميسامي كوبر قدر ان هو يكشف يوريا هيب's horrible truth ويوريا هيب left Canterbury with his mother. بعد كده شفنا ان دورا died وديفيد was very sad because he loved Dora very much. بعد كده ديفيد went to Yarmouth وهناك شهد وفاة هام وهو بيحاول ينقذ جيمس ستيرفورث. ديفيد traveled all over Europe لغاية ما جاله letter from Agnes بتشجعه ان هو to have a purpose in life. David after 3 or 4 years he went back again to London. قابل Aunt Betsy وسألها if Dora was in love. بعد كده قالت له you can go and ask her. وفعلا ديفيد راح لأجنس and they confessed their love together and they were married. They had children and they lived together for 20 years. لو عجبك الفيديو ما تنساش تسبسكرايب in my channel إنجليزي تجريبي لغات وكمان you like and share. Thank you. Goodbye.